there's got to be more than this.
Tell me your last name again, Chris. Capozzoli?
Capozzoli. It's on the hat.
Oh.
I wear my own merch.
Yeah, I can't pronounce it.
Well, it's just, yeah.
All right, Chris Capozzoli, thanks for coming over, man. And I'm excited to talk to you. We know nothing of one another. I know more about you only because I'm a fan of Phony Rice Unit on Instagram. And
It's a good handle.
it's a great handle. And especially, if you're of the bluegrass persuasion, and I have some secret bluegrass history, which we may or may not get into, but I wanted to get you on the podcast. I thought, how do we frame this? Because as I understand, like you've lived here 20 years.
21. I did a hiatus in New York. I went to grad school at NYU and then came right back because I missed trees, which was a real thing. Like I was just riding on the subway. I was like, I miss trees.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh God, I probably shouldn't live in New York anymore. And so, yeah.
Telltale sign. But so you, to me, like you are involved in the music community here in Nashville. It's like, to me, world headquarters of music. It's Music City, and I think it's even more so Music City.
I've been told this by many people.
Well, and we can debate that point too, should it come up. But, you have a family now. You're not like touring exactly. You're not an artist. I don't mean that critically in the sense of like.
I think I'm an artist in the sense of Andy Kaufman was an artist.
Yeah.
Which is like the chaos is the art, and it's not on purpose. I was just born that way.
Well, I think then we're going to get along just fine because I'm well experienced, well versed in that form of lifestyle.
Nice. It's not a choice. You're born into it.
Yeah, you're born into it. You are chosen. You're called. Many are called. Few answer the call.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. So let's see. I think that what maybe just finally be like, I just got to talk to this guy was like 3 days ago. You posted a carousel on Instagram, and maybe you can describe what that was, and we can just go from there.
I'll have to think about what the three, was it the dogs one?
Yeah, the dogs one.
Okay, good. Yeah. Because this was like probably about a month ago. I started just like taking these ideas that I had that I thought were funny. My wife has been awesome because she's very type A and very practical, and like went to grad school and actually finished unlike me, and like sees things through. And I'll always have funny ideas, and she's like, you should probably do that. And for the longest time, I just wouldn't. I'm like, oh, that's a funny idea. And then like just be super ADD about it and just never see it through. And so I finally decided to like approach social media that way of like, if I have a funny idea and I want to make something funny on Photoshop, I'll actually post it. And so I posted the dogs one was probably like the 5th or 6th one that I'd done that, and it got 50, 60,000 views or something like that. And like, I could play like Jerry Reed's The Claw and it'd get like 5 likes and someone being like, so talented. And I'm like, great, this is going terribly for me. But I started to actually see some like traction on social media. And I think for the longest time, my approach was like, social media is bad. Algorithms are stupid. It's just all part of big business. And then I realized I was like, oh, like, if it's sincere and it's kind of funny to engage with people. And I'm the kind of person who like, I'm nobody famous. A buddy of mine jokingly said, I'm the most well-connected, unfamous person in Nashville. And that feels very true. But like, I answer messages. It doesn't like spam. I'll answer it. Bots, I'll answer because it's funny to me and it's engaging and you end up meeting some people you like. So anyway, yeah, the dogs on, spirit animal dogs of bluegrass players, just a continuation of that of like, the worst part about that was like, I had to watch our kid the next day and it was like 12:30 at night and I was laying in bed, just like finishing my book, turned off the light and was like, oh shit, this is funny. I got to do it. And like, I'm up at like 2:30 in the morning, still like photoshopping on my laptop. And my wife was like, what are you doing? I was like, I had a funny idea. I've got to see it through. And she's like, all right.
Yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll have it's up here right now so you can see the actual carousel. But like, describe a couple of the dogs.
Well, I the first one, I actually started with Catch Secor, and hopefully he's not overly litigious. But
he was here yesterday.
Yeah, he got Chihuahua, just frantic energy, just like never stopped moving, and that's where the joke started. And then it like immediately went to like Chris Thiele is a whippet. Like my buddy Brian Hay has whippets, and I was just like, that's Chris Thiele. Like his dogs are just like, Chris Thiele, like brilliant minded, always cold, very skinny. Like can't stop moving, but like you're confused by it. And it just like, it kept going. And then it was like, yeah, Dell and Ronnie McCurry. And somebody actually commented, I did Dell and Rob, I think. I can't remember if it was Ronnie or Rob. But somebody was like, what about Rob? And I was like, Rob doesn't want to be on the internet, or whoever, the banjo player. I'm trying to remember.
Rob, yeah.
Rob is the banjo player. Yeah. But yeah, it was just like this continuing funny idea. And it really kind of started with, I'm trying to think what the first one I did was, because I did like, if you like this, you should try this. And it was like Billy Strings, like you should listen to the Insane Clown Posse. And they just kind of wrote themselves. Like, again, it's just me sitting there thinking of funny stuff. And
it's pretty niche.
Yeah.
But if you're initiated,
yeah,
then it'll ring true.
I think for me, that was kind of the thing was I have no label. I have no publishing deal. I left PROs like 10 years ago angrily. And so I'm like, as truly independent, there's no management, which is good. They couldn't handle me, I don't think.
No filter. Yeah. There's nobody to rein you in.
Yeah. So it literally is just like, I think this is funny. I'm going to do it. But it also means that there's no reliability to the post, which also is fine by me. Like if I had to approach it in the sense of like, oh, I have to post content today, I would be terrible at that. I think it's more just like, I had a crazy idea. Here it is. We'll deal with it.
There's something to that, which is that like, you strike me as a guy who doesn't like to work, and maybe we'll get it. Maybe you even wrote a song about it.
My previous bosses would agree.
And as soon as something becomes work, it's no longer fun. Is that fair to say? I mean, that's kind of what you're saying between the lines a little bit.
Yeah. Cause my wife is chill. Talk about the stuff I do. And I'm starting to listen more where she'll be like, oh, this is a great business venture. You should do this. Or like, my buddy Dan Voigt, he builds mandolins and I do some work. And she's always coming up with like business ideas. Like, once you talk about like money and taxes, I'm not interested anymore. Even though I file our taxes every year, but I do it very angrily. But nothing against taxes, but it's just, I hate the process of dealing with business. And so, yeah, I think once I think of it as business, it sucks. I'm not interested anymore. If it's funny to me or it's engaging, I'll do it all day. Like I could gig 7 nights a week playing with the bluegrass band or doing solo stuff or playing jazz piano or anything that I do. And I'd love it. If I got paid, even better. The second somebody started talking about like business, I'm like, oh God, I hate it now. Like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Well, it's funny to say like the second you got paid, there would immediately be like, there's no point at which money has let's see, once money's involved, there's obligation.
Yeah.
It's just like if it's a gig, and I say this as somebody that's like somehow made a career out of making music, but my way of doing it is like, I think something we have in common is I'm interested in a lot of different things, and but the thing that makes money is the thing I'm usually like the least interested in at any given time, and those things switch around because I do like playing music a lot. But when I was touring constantly and like doing, God forbid, a Kickstarter for a record, and I just like hated all of it and I couldn't wait to quit. And so I would like write short stories because they had no purpose.
It was your outlet.
It was an outlet. Yeah. And now
when the art becomes the job, it's no longer the outlet. It's suddenly the job.
Exactly. And it sucks. And, but so like right now I'm like way into writing and so the music now I play mostly like playing Randy Newman covers.
Oh man. I love
just
me some Randy
deep.
Newman.
Oh dude. It's just endless. That like Randy Newman, Volume 1 songbook.
Yeah. The black and white cover.
Yeah. Just, that is to me, I can just listen to that music.
No, that's
like desert island music for me.
That's an amazing record. And actually, was it Good Old Boys, I think is the record that has Birmingham and all that. And on the record that I did in 2024, I covered it as like a finger style, like Jordan Dice style.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, because he had done some Randy Newman stuff. I was like, well, I'm going to do Birmingham. And he's like, that's cool, man. I haven't done that one yet. I was like, all right, cool. But yeah, no, growing up playing classical piano and then jazz piano, which is what I originally did, Randy Newman was like the outlet of like, oh, you can be silly and be formally trained. Okay, like this, like Victor Borgo was cool and that whole world, but like I didn't want to just sit around like, play Rachmaninoff and be like, oh, look how wide I can get my hands on the keys.
That is the gig. If you're playing Rachmaninoff, it's all about the reach.
Yeah, look how amazing I am at doing this. It's like, when I was growing up, I had a piano teacher. She was at Manhattan School of Music in Juilliard, and she was just like, "No, you have to want to play Liszt." And I was like, "But I like Randy Newman. Like, let me play Randy Newman. That's way more fun." So,
yeah, it's so weird that tension between taking something serious and not taking it serious at all.
Yeah,
that is some tricky terrain to navigate.
I think
maybe.
especially when you have to make money, which you do, and Nashville's gotten very expensive. And I feel like, 21 years ago when I moved here in '05, and like, I worked at Harris Teeter, and like life
The
was,
one on 21st?
yeah,
Oh, dude, that
21st
was
and
my.
Blair. Yeah.
I probably saw you. You probably checked me out.
You probably did. I looked kind of like this. It was a great gig. I got paid like $13 an hour. This is before they had like the self-checkout kiosks, and I could just, go to college and afford college on a scholarship, some financial aid money and a job at Harris Teeter and still play music. And
Yeah.
that was like the perfect world. It was like, Harris Teeter was a laid back enough gig that like nobody was taking it that seriously. Obviously, like, you had to be appropriate for work, but it was a unique time. I think Margot Price talked about Hillsborough Village in that mid 2000s era as sort of being this Greenwich Village that is gone and will never come back in that regard in her book. And I was like, dang, she got it right. That it really was in a weird way.
Yeah. That was when Fido was like the only coffee shop.
Yeah. And
That-
it would be open until midnight. And I would go there and like, you could like pregame at Fido before like Four Loko really took off. You could like drink coffee and then go home and drink some Steel Reserve. And then the only bars that you could go to were Mafiosa's and Greenhouse because nothing else is open after midnight.
Is Mafioso still or
No, they closed down.
when like pandemic
2 or 3 years ago, because we do our Monday night gig at the 12 South Tap Room.
next door there?
Yeah, and they were usually closed on Mondays. And so, I remember it's like White Buffalo or something now, or Buffalo Exchange, or I don't know. It's a Buffalo is involved, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're not there anymore. I always loved the sign on the door that said, "Sorry, we're open till 3 a.m." Like, for some reason in like my college brain, that was a hilarious sign.
I mean, it's like a sorry to the employees. I feel like first and foremost, God, who wants to do that?
I think it was an interesting time though, because I've joked around. The great thing about Nashville at that time was that you had to play nice, even though I'm obviously known for joking around on the internet, but like you had to make friends with people and you had to be socially aware, because otherwise you were never going to get invited to parties, and that was the only way you were going to do stuff.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't just like go out on Broadway till like 2 a.m. If you wanted to do anything after 11 p.m., which like at 21 I did, you had to have friends.
Yeah.
And you had to work for it.
You were forced into it.
Yeah.
Friendships. Ugh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because this all resonates. When I first moved to town, my first apartment, which a friend of mine got for me, like sight unseen. I like paid the deposit on it. Was at the corner of Natchez and Blair, which is like down from Browns.
Yeah.
So
I lived at Fairfax and 24th, across from Ronald McDonald House.
right in there.
Yeah.
I'm shocked I never saw you.
You probably did.
Yeah, because I would walk up to the Harris Teeter to get my groceries, and then or just end up at Brown's and never make it to the Harris Teeter as often as not.
Yeah.
And
I think that still happens, even though it's a Kroger now. I think that still happens sometimes.
it's an easy one. It's an easy detour.
Yeah, now that Brown's has expanded, it's just all that more enticing. Come for the burgers, stay for the alcoholism.
I mean, those
Joke.
crusty
I love Browns.
bartenders. I worked on those dudes for so long. Like you definitely had to. There was like a 6-month period where you just had to show up very consistently and
Yeah.
put up with it.
Yeah.
Before anybody was ever
chase
nice
you
to
off.
you.
That was
Yeah.
back when like the only thing on tap was Bud Heavy too. Like,
Yeah, I loved it though.
You had to drink Budweiser.
Coldest Budweisers,
Yeah.
those like frosty mugs that would like the ice would crystallize on the outside. I never drank a beer as cold as
Yeah,
those Buds at
they had those. I
Browns.
remember that, the little frozen mugs, and you had to drink Budweiser. I don't think they even had Bud Light. I think if I remember,
You could
there's
get a bottle of Bud Light.
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, if you were
They
like,
had the
you know,
one tap of Budweiser, and that was it.
that was it. It was good
and it
enough.
was obviously before the expansion, and so.
But
yeah.
man, I loved playing shows there. That was some of my first shows, and I've used that in the loosest term possible.
Yeah, I mean, it has a max capacity of like 15, or it did back then.
No, yeah, exactly. And it's still that. It's still that. And all of those 15 people, only like 4 can actually see the stage.
Yeah.
You know?
And 5 of our regulars, and they're actually pissed that you're doing it.
No, totally.
Like,
100%.
I didn't know this was going on. It's like, really? It happens every Friday.
Oh man, I got one of my first shows there. I got tipped a $5 from Nancy Griffith, who was
Wow,
like
that's
it.
cool.
I know, that was like
Yeah.
that was when I was first like, all right, maybe this like I can
That'll put some wind in your sails real quick.
I'm not going to go home just yet.
I've heard stories that she had a bit of a chip on her shoulder. I love Nancy Griffith as
we all
a
do.
Texan by birth. But I feel like she could have taken $5 from you and taken wind out of your sails too. She'd be like, "This is terrible. I'm taking this."
Totally.
So
Either
to
way,
get $5 from her was like a
Yeah.
huge boost of confidence.
Leave a $5, take a $5.
Yeah.
The Nancy Griffith rule.
Because I'm sure she probably did take some money from tip drivers. Like, I'm doing you a service. You need to get a day job.
But like for the longest time, I mean, this is another thing I feel in kinship with is that I have no ability. I don't want to say this out loud because I'm trying to make this podcast make some money, but I really am not making money is not a priority or a skill I've developed in life, but I'm somehow like alive. And, but my version of what you did at that time when I first moved to town was I was a valet at the Hermitage downtown.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a job that I had for like a year and a half until I was fired for like wrecking one of the cars, which was a miracle. I made it a year and a half without that happening.
Well, those were back in the days too. And I remember if you did go downtown, everybody had these giant trucks and everybody was like coming down from Clarksville. Like you didn't have like the tourists like today. I definitely scratched some cars in parking garages downtown back in the day.
It's a rite of passage. Really.
It really is. Because, if you drive an F-350 or like a King Ranch edition and you park in a parking garage, your door is mine now.
Totally. But I remember like when I first got that job, I was a little butthurt because I'd moved from Seattle and like I was able to play music for a living. Which meant like I could cover my $300 a month rent.
Yeah.
And then when I moved here, I'm like, wow, no one cares about me. That's sad. And so I was forced to get a job and I felt very sad. But then like the second I like got over that, which was like one day of actual employment, I was like, oh my God, all I have to do is just stand on this curb and then people just give me money. And then I go home and I can do whatever the fuck I want. And that whole like minimum viable effort strategy of life to maximize creative opportunity off the clock was a formula that like I thrived in.
Yeah, it's great. Affordability makes for great artists because you can work your dead end job that you don't necessarily want to. Like I wasn't going on to like Harris Teeter Corporate and Raleigh, North Carolina.
You weren't gunning for manager?
No, they're just like, who's that silly boy who's working at the cash register? There's none of that. But it affords you that opportunity to make the art your outlet as opposed to having to do it full time. I think there's a lot of value in dead end jobs. And even like as an adult, like for to give you like my brief resume, like I worked for Tracy Lawrence for a year. I'd worked at the Bellmead Plantation, which was actually kind of a fun job. But when I moved back to town, I did that with my not quite a master's degree. And then I got a job working for Tracy Lawrence selling merch and got fired within like 6 months because I was just, they're all good old boys and I was just me. And I remember like his management guy was like, listen, you just kind of don't vibe with the crew. I was like, why? Because I don't smoke cigarettes and watch the hunting channel? Like, I'll start smoking. What do you want me to do? And he's like, no, you're done. And instantly got a job with ASCAP and it was just doing sales and licensing, which is like the worst job in America. And I will openly say that because pretty much everybody I worked for has gone from there.
I mean, does ASCAP have any employees anymore? Like they don't have a phone number. You can't call anybody.
No,
There's no rep anymore.
Yeah, and that kind of made me disparage from it. I don't think I ever signed any paperwork saying that I can't disparage them, but that seemed to be by design. I always think about there's like a quote from 30 Rock when Jack Donaghy is just like Six Sigmaing his way to success. And he's like, gentlemen, I've moved our phones to an area of India where they don't have phone service. We're now providing the same level of customer support at zero the cost. That's how it felt sometimes. And so I remarkably did that job all the way up to COVID. And I was like planning an escape and then I got laid off. And I was almost like, oh, thank God. But like I did that almost in the same way of like I could still make music and I still gigged. And then I took a job with Iron Mountain doing business development, doing sales. And like, I hate sales. I hate it so much.
You seem like not the right guy.
No, like, and I think people I've always had bosses who are just like, you're really outgoing, you'll talk to people. So I can just like sit back and work. And then like I get into sales. I'm like, listen, you don't want to buy this. It's garbage. And they're like, no, you're not supposed to tell them that. I'm like, oh, but it is. Iron Mountain was good. Like I will say Iron Mountain did do some good stuff, but
I don't know what's Iron Mountain.
they do records management. They're a big giant company, and I handled media assets. Actually, I worked with artists and managers, and I did sign a bunch of NDAs and things about that. But it was working with artists with catalogs that are priceless to manage them, digitize them, ensure that they have longevity. But even that, I got paid good money, and it was just a way to have an outlet of making art. Like I still kept gigging because I was like, well, one of these days the music will take off and I'll be able to leave this job. A job that for some people was like a dream job. If you want to do sales, that's a great place to be. But then our entire team got laid off and I was in the same way. I was like, oh, thank God I don't have to do that anymore. And my wife was like, why do you keep taking sales jobs? I was like, they just keep falling in my lap, but like, I hate them.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it was benefit though. I don't know. I feel like I've been laid off. I've been doing the music thing for 2 years full time, and I feel like I'm now making better art because I just don't care anymore. I'm like, at a certain point, we're going to lose the house, but that's fine.
Yeah, that's it's hard. Art's hard on people. It's hard on relationships, particularly wife.
She weirdly is like fine with it. Like she again, she's the type A one. She goes to work and she's like, well, I'll try to make sure we don't lose the house and you look for an exit strategy. And I'm like, I'm good at exit strategies. That I can do.
Strategies. That's a permanent exit strategy seeker. I feel like is a good way to describe you.
Yeah, I just read, I'm a big reading buff, and I read the entire catalog of Norman Maclean, which for anybody who has read Norman Maclean knows
The River Runs Through It is...
It's exactly 1.5 novels because he wrote A River Runs Through It and other short stories. And then there was one posthumously released Young Men and Fire about the Man Gulch Fire, which I'm now like infatuated with. But Wag Dodge created the first known documented escape fire. It was known of before, but it's basically you light a fire to escape a fire. And I read that and I was like, my God, that's my entire life. I'm a human escape fire, just lighting fires to escape things.
Have you heard of the Rest is History podcast? You ever listen to that?
No.
Oh my God, dude. I think that you would like, are you a history fan amongst your readings?
I actually got a degree in history, which is really unfortunate.
I fantasized about getting a degree in history.
You'd be glad you didn't. Because like, I remember.
What do you do with it?
Yeah, you teach. And I remember at Vandy, they're just like, you can go on and teach. And I was like, crap, I want to play music. Which I did my minor in music, which helped drastically. But yeah, I like history in the sense of I like reading about things. I think the thing that always bothered me was like I did North American history, and everybody's always like, "Oh, you got a degree in history. You must really love the Civil War." I'm like, no, don't even kind of give a shit about it. I know it happened. I know it's important. I am not. I've been to Gettysburg. It's an open field. I'm good. Like I don't need more of that.
Well, here the Civil War is like ever present.
Yeah,
it's
well,
the
oh man, you're gonna make me talk about my degree.
No, I'm just saying. Like I am interested in history, and I too am not that interested in the Civil War. And part of it's because I grew up on the other side of the country.
Yeah, Idaho
it was an issue.
Yeah,
I loved Lewis and Clark. That's my story.
That's the stuff that I love is like the going west. And I just read a bunch of A.B. Guthrie, which is all the sagas of like going west, and that to me is way more interesting in American history. But yeah, why the default is just like, oh, you studied North American history, you must love the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and it's like so much other stuff happened.
Yeah. Can I tell you about my fascination with the Rest is History podcast for a second? Because I can't talk to anybody about this, and you're going to have to do it. You're so close.
No,
that's fine.
That's what I do. Escape fire.
Okay, so this podcast is like two guys, and they're kind of famous historians themselves. One is Tom Holland. He wrote, among other famous books, a book called Communion. And then the other one is Dominic Sandbrick. So it's like a conversation style pod, but they're cheeky Brits. And they kind of do deep dives on all kinds of topics. And it's a huge podcast now in the world. It's pretty famous. But I have gotten really into Anglo-Saxon history of England, after the Romans pulled out in 8400 and like what happened. Like I was always like, why did England like, how did it all start? How did like the United Kingdom? What does that implies like separate kingdoms? And I just like got into
It's
the
weird that I
stories.
actually was thinking about that the other day myself, oddly enough, and like talking to a British person, like, wait, how did this happen?
Like about that?
Yeah,
About that
literally
part of British history?
about the UK. I was just like, wait a minute, like we just accept this as always being there. But
Yeah.
we know the Romans were involved, and we know the Vikings were involved, and like,
Yeah.
again, I didn't do European history, so I took like a couple classes, but like,
It's so fascinating. And I don't know exactly why I'm interested in that specifically, but I think it's because I do love reading. I do love the English language, and that the way English happened is it's baked into the history of that country, specifically with 1066 with the Norman invasion.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know anything about this, but like that's basically the French. They were kind of Vikings also.
I know about the tapestry, and I know about oh man, what is the habeas corpus establishment? The Magna Carta. Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
It's been a while. I graduated in 09, but it's coming back.
There you go. But like the French invaded, and then all of the language that was sort of Brit and Celtic and Germanic.
Yeah, there's a lot of Germanic in there.
Yeah, with the Anglo-Saxons, of course.
Yeah.
And but the Norman invasion, like the Normans took over. Like they deposed all of the elites, and they became the ruling class of England. Which, I mean, 1,000 years later, it's probably diluted a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just that whole like subterfuge of language and the mixing up, I just find that so fascinating. And then getting into all the stories. This is all to say that I have a hard time sleeping at night, and the thing that I do so that I'm not hurting other people in my family is I put a episode of the Rest History podcast, and it's the same 20 episodes on the history of Anglo-Saxon, and I have
It's like your
one
white noise.
earbud in, and I just sit there and I listen to it until I fall asleep again, and it's just very soothing, and I recommend it to anybody.
I feel like most historians can get that way because they can, get the Ben Stein voice on, where you're just like, this is informative but relaxing.
Yes, yeah,
Let's
totally.
go on. It's
There's a whole series of channels on the YouTube
Yeah.
called History for Sleep, but I often don't sleep because the subject matter is so fascinating.
It's Terry Gross style.
It totally is.
ASMR.
It's like NPR,
and tell
old
me
school
more
NPR.
about your childhood and how that traumatized you when your parents exploded. That's every Terry Gross interview. It's like, oh God, she said that so calmly.
Man, I miss her. I mean, we're all inheritors of the torch that she.
I feel like she
originally
did
lit.
establish that. Mike Birbiglia had like a great bit using Terry Gross, and I was just like, man, she really did like set the framework for like the in-depth interview that is both comfortable and pushes you enough into the uncomfortable zone, like the uncanny valley
Totally.
of learning about somebody. She was an ace at that.
There was nobody. I guess Charlie Rose was kind of like that.
Yeah.
in that era. But do you know Dick Cavett?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I love those old Dick Cavett episodes on YouTube. I don't know if you ever see them.
No.
Oh God, dude, you should watch it. Like because it was just a different time, and so there's like actual depth to late night talk television.
Yeah, you
So
had to fill hours. It was like the album.
It would just be like kind of deep talks, and I just love the way he interviewed guys. And man, he had like Laurence Olivier on there, and I mean some like timeless interviews. That
one of my favorite interviews to like do a complete like left field turn on you was Guar. Was on the Joan Rivers show in the 90s in character. And it's like the kind of thing that would never happen
How do
today.
they talk? Do
They like as Odorous Arungus, like, and like the voice, and they talk about like, destroying the human race. And there's like a whole thing.
They don't break character.
No, not at all. She's like, well, do people like having blood thrown? It's like, humans are naturally vile creatures which just want destruction. I mean, look at your politics. And it's like, my God, this is amazing. But like, you'd never get that today. Like, it would have to be like a short form bit on social media. You wouldn't just get an hour of Joan Rivers and Odorous Arungus with, a carp for a wiener on stage, but it's there.
Yeah, therein lay the reason why mainstream television is dying.
Yeah.
It's because it's all on the internet now. Like there's some pretty inventive shows that I could imagine that happening on. Okay,
Yeah, so I completely turned on you.
now this is okay. This is what this conversation is going to be freewheeling.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to offer. I'm not rich, very poor, actually, remarkably poor. I'm not famous. I have nothing to offer except escape fire nonsense.
Well, you're better at escape fire nonsense than me, but otherwise, I think we have a lot in common. So, like, what for you? in your more serious moments, if you ever have them,
Oh, I
like
do.
what, drives you? Is it like endless distraction? Or is there a through line to your curiosity?
I don't know if there is, because like I joke around about just being like ADHD, but I'm not. Trust me, my parents tried to figure that one out when I was a kid. I think I can get a little deep dive where like growing up, I had a great idyllic childhood as much as you could so, and like I think this is going to sound silly, but like my dad lived through 9/11. That's a fun thing that you throw down and people are just like, oh shit. And you're like, yeah, that's fun, right? And I think it just sort of like between that and like we moved to New Jersey from Texas, and then
What do you mean he lived through 9/11?
oh, he worked across the street.
Okay.
Yeah, he saw it.
He was there.
Yeah. He actually only recently started talking about it. He lost some friends, and obviously it's a very traumatic thing. We were lucky my dad lived.
You were alive then.
I was, and we were living in New Jersey across the river. And so he worked in the city, and I think that just like it set in motion. Like I feel like I had a bunch of deep thoughts, but like we had moved to New Jersey. Both my grandparents died. There was a bunch of family drama. And then like 9/11 happened. And then like I was just in high school with like all of these thoughts of just like, oh, the world is dark. Like there was a moment when I realized in high school, I was like, oh, I don't think at 14 you're supposed to think about the impermanence of existence. And yet this has happened now. And like, fortunately, my parents are wonderful people. And like we all kind of worked through it together, if that makes any sense. My mom went crazy for a little while, but she ended up just shopping at Costco like the world was ending. So we had like a lot of bottled water in the house for a while.
Common solution to life's ills.
Right. Yeah. Like my mom's the kind of person who, child of an alcoholic. She is. So my grandfather passed away long before I was born. Her form of control is like, the way that she can feel better about things if she can control them. And so like her methodology for dealing with 9/11 is just like, I know if we have tuna fish and water, we're good. And it's like, I think it's deeply complicated, but that's fine. But it set in mind, like for me, music had always been around, and it kind of just laid this groundwork for now thinking way deeper about things where like, I think I was fucked from the beginning on like getting a normal job. Like I got into Vandy and they liked me. And I think it was because on paper, I was very interesting. And then, with that interest came the deep thoughts of like, well, what is commerce? What is the meaning of money? Why are we here? What is all of this? And my dad's like, oh God, you're thinking about this way too much. Like you just knock some of those thoughts down.
Yeah, do their homework.
Yeah.
Get the degree.
Well, and I think my dad was just like, he had those thoughts. He was like, no, you bludgeon those thoughts. You don't say it. And I was like, I can't, I'm sorry. Too Italian and Texan. Like you've made me and now I have to say them. But I think that's like, to get back to the point, like what sort of is like the credo or the ethos. And to me, it's sort of like life is confusing. And how do you make a little bit of sense of it? Like not to go like all religious spirituality on you. I don't think life is miserable, and I don't think the universe is terrible. I think Cassidy from Dirk's band, I texted the other day. I was like, I have a new ethos, which is that the universe is your friend if you let it be your friend. And that's sort of like, you can see the good of things when you want to. I've also been on the other side where I see the bad in things. And I think that's sort of the driving thing is like, life can be miserable. Not that life is miserable, but life can be miserable. Let's make it not miserable. Like, let's have fun with it and like joke around. And I think that resonates with a lot of people. And I think the people who don't like me, it tends to be because they either struggle with that themselves or they take themselves very seriously. My wife, as somebody who takes herself very seriously, and obviously she likes me. We have a kid together and a great marriage, but she had said, the reason that people who take themselves seriously don't like me is because I just like refuse to do it out in public. But on the point of like the serious time, it is music for me, I think and art. I paint, I'm an avid reader. I'm reading The River Why right now by David James Duncan, which is just like an entire ethos mindfuck in its own way, which kudos to Erin Morris. She was the one I'd been emailing back and forth with her. She does marketing and PR in town. And I was emailing her because I was just like, I don't know how to have a career. And she's like, that's interesting. Do you like fishing? And I was like, I love it. I love Norman Maclean. She's like, you should read The River Why. And I was like, all right, cool.
I think I tried to read that like 20 years ago, and it was one of the books I just it didn't grab me enough.
And I understand why. I can, not that I know you.
I read books all the time that I'm not interested in, though, so that I don't really understand that.
I equated it to, did you ever read Victor Wooten's book, The Music Lesson?
No.
Okay, don't, because you won't like it. But if you did like it, you would like The River Why. And The Music Lesson is just chaos. And like, I've met Victor before. He's the nicest guy in the world. And The River Why and The Music Lesson follow the same trajectory, which is, this is all true if you want it to be, but if you read too deep into the context of the story, you're missing the bigger picture. And that's not to say like, you don't like The River Why and you're wrong. It's just more like, I realize that you have to, at the front end of The River Why and David James Duncan and Victor Wooten's writing, you have to accept all the rules are off the table. And now I'm just in the book. Like, you have to accept the universe of the book. And then it works really well. I realize that's a really heady thought for a podcast about music, but I feel like you follow me.
Yeah, no, I can hang all day.
Hell yeah.
I mean,
this podcast is going to be 4 hours long.
My favorite literature is that requires that of you, usually to accept a story on its own terms. And
that may not fit into the reality that you know, or the nonsensical nature of understanding characters. I think somebody who did that really well was obviously Kurt Vonnegut, because Kurt Vonnegut resonates with a lot of people. But I think with Kurt Vonnegut, you just accept on the forefront, he is brilliant and therefore I need to stick with him, and people do. Vonnegut has that sort of like unique ability to kind of pull that off in the same way that like Dan Reeder can just drop F-bombs and we're like, oh, he's an old man. It's cute.
Yeah.
That's
how I feel about him when he does that. It's like, oh, sounds clean when it comes out of his mouth.
Yeah, for some reason, just pussy titties. Sorry, you have to edit that out. Like, no, it stays.
No, it stays.
My wife was like, please don't say anything that will make you unemployable. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'll see you later.
I feel like so far you're all right. Yeah.
He really does have a song. I mean, that's just all he says. And like, for some reason, when it comes from Dan Reeder, you're like, yeah, okay.
His story too is just like I feel like hope for people like you. And I'm just gonna put myself in that camp as well, because I feel like his life makes no sense.
Yeah.
The best, and
he lives in
even
Germany
his break.
now.
Yeah. His break was self-made, in the sense that, I mean, he just like sent,
it was John Prine, right? Oh Boy Records.
Prine some tapes.
Yeah.
It was even weirder than that. Like, maybe it was tapes and paintings. And Prine, of all people, Prine would be like,
that'll usually get you on a watch list in most places.
Yeah, totally, nowadays, especially.
Listen, I've had to talk to the
9/11.
CIA a couple of times. Like, no, it was well intentioned. I'm just kidding. I never have yet.
Yeah.
There's still time.
I'm sure Phony Rice Unit is on a few naughty lists.
Yeah, I'm sure the government is just like, no, he's fine.
Yeah, just keep an eye on him.
He's just
like,
crazy.
But yeah, that's funny, man. I mean, like, so you just, when you emailed your friend, and you're like, I don't think I know how to get a career, like, that to me speaks of there's some angst in there, some feeling of a certain inadequacy or an inability to square one's self wholly with the world as it is.
Yeah, well, no, like, I'm 39, and so I think for me, when, as you know, coming up playing music, you kind of have these starry-eyed views of what music looks like. And like, well, if I work hard enough, I mean, I wrote the song Hard Work. So like, if I work hard enough, like it'll all work out for me and people will see that. And I've joked around for the last 10, 15 years that Nashville is not Music City, it's Entertainment City. And the product put forward is entertainment at the end of the day. And I think people hear that and they think of it disparagingly. And it's probably just my accent, which is part New York, New Jersey, part Texas, but like, I don't mean it disparagingly. It's sort of like, no, entertainment is what sells at the end of the day. Like, Jerry Reed didn't get famous because he was a phenomenal, fingerstyle player. He got famous because he was also hilarious and a great actor and all of those other things. He was also a phenomenal player, but you take Jerry Reed and you just make him a phenomenal player. And I don't think he has the career that he does. So I think it's not necessarily disparagingly that I say that, but I think within the last couple of years, I've had more of like an about face about what being a musician means for me and being more comfortable with that. Like, a good example was somebody said like, well, did you have imposter syndrome? I was like, no, it's not that. I hate that term. I think it's the dumbest term ever. I once jokingly said imposter syndrome is for people who are imposters who don't belong in the room. And it was like, oh, don't tell that to somebody who has it. And I was like, I know, but that's how I feel. it was more like, I think I'd studied music. I did undergrad. I almost majored in music, but I would have had to take a bunch of ensemble credits, and I didn't want to stick around college another year because I was broke. And then I went on to grad school, and I did 3 years of music. And then once again, I finished undergrad, but I dropped out of grad school 1 credit shy and moved back to town because like, oh, there's no point in the degree. I've learned what I need to learn. And so I think there was a little bit of chip on my shoulder, being somebody who did very deeply in the world of theory. I studied classical and jazz. And so like, I think for me that the only thing that perplexed me for the longest time was tritone substitutions. And man, that made total sense one day. It just like clicked and I was like, crap, how did I not figure this out for so long? But
you really get around some modulations with the tritone substitution thing is so crazy.
Oh yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
It's like the way the word I'd put to it.
Well, and I had this moment, this is like the deep dive nerdiness of it all, was like, what the problem I had was my theory teacher growing up. I had a theory teacher and a piano teacher from the age of 3. And so I was deeply in the world of theory and composition. By the time I got to college, like I had already done a college degree's worth, so theory was easy. But I don't think she understood tritone subs growing up. And she going through like jazz, we'd be playing like, some Thelonious Monk, Blue Monk or something. And she would do like a tritone sub, like, oh, you can play an A flat dominant 7 here. And I was like, why? And she's like, you just can, don't question it.
Yeah.
And then like one day I was like sitting around, I was like, oh, 2 of the 5 notes of a dominant 7th are the same.
Yes.
And it's bass leading when the melody note follows suit. If those 2 notes fit, you can use the tritone sub. And it's like, oh God, I would have understood that at 12 if somebody had just said it that way.
Which is, we'll go over 97% of the people listening to this has said. But the point being that what I want to say is that's such a powerful realization as it was a eureka moment to you.
Yeah.
But it's also so esoteric and has very little ability to be monetized.
Oh, my wife was just like, can you say it in like listening terms? I was like, no, because Coldplay never did it. And she's like, crap. And I was like, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, that's therein lay the rub, right? I mean, like I think we all have to sort of like the more, I don't want to say sophisticated. I don't like words like that, but substantive, maybe our appreciation of a line of art, always the smaller the audience.
Well, I think Bela Fleck, he was on somebody's podcast recently, and Bela's a super cool dude. I've gone to his camp, and he's like the nicest guy in the world. And me, at this point, if he wasn't, I would say that, but he is. He really is that great. And he had said on a podcast that his goal was never to make art music that was inaccessible. He's like, if you've made art music, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he's like, if you make art music that's inaccessible, all you do is just lose like 99% of your audience. The goal is to get that 99% interested in the art form. And I think like Bela Fleck and the Flecktones have done a phenomenal job of that. I think Bela's done that with world music. And I really like that. Like, it's not about just like getting off to making something esoteric so people don't understand it, so you can be like, haha, I'm smarter than you.
Yeah.
It's about getting people who don't understand it to want to understand it. And I think that's kind of a great place to be as a musician, is like, how do I get people to care about tritone subs? As silly as that sounds.
I totally get it, man.
Yeah, reharmonizing, like that sort of stuff. Like, how do you get people to think that's cool? Like, how do you get people to like listen to Dave Brubeck? Like that's my vibe.
Yeah. Any insights
on how to listen to Dave Brubeck? Yeah. Dave Brubeck only became kind of narky because everybody liked it. He was the original Coldplay in a way. Like, this was in the age of like, bop jazz coming on the scene, and a bunch of white suburban families just being like, oh, they do heroin, we don't want any part of that Miles Davis nonsense. And Dave Brubeck was like, I went to Pacific University and I like the piano, and they're like, this is good, this is clean cut. But like, that wasn't Brubeck's intention. Like, yeah, Brubeck didn't intend to make narky jazz music.
What do you mean by narky? What's
just like the kind of stuff that like, jazz heads would like shrug off as being like Nora Jones, I think, is another great example of like, Nora Jones is phenomenally talented. Nora Jones is a great writer. She's a great performer. There's a depth to the accessibility of the art form. And like, jazz heads will sometimes write off Nora Jones because it's like, oh, it's Starbucks music. And it's like, listen, you would never have known about her had Starbucks not signed on. But, just sort of, that's what I mean by narky. It's like stuff that because it got popular, suddenly people want to dismiss it. because it was accessible. And I think like Brubeck was really accessible. Like everybody should listen to Time Out, and everybody knows Take 5. Most people probably accidentally know Blue Ronda a la Turk, you know. Autumn, it's not Autumn Leaves. It's Autumn and, man, what is the name of that song? There's a Leaves song. It's the second track on the album, and I'm forgetting it right now.
It's not Autumn Leaves, though.
No, it's not Autumn Leaves. It's a Brubeck composition, and I can't believe I'm spacing on this right now. It has to do with autumn and leaves. Crap. But anyway, it's the second track on the record, I think, and it has this beautiful sweeping, like 2-minute like oratory of piano of Brubeck just doing these wild, impressive sweeps that will make any piano player lose their mind. And yet somehow it got like put in the pantheon of like people being like, yeah, but have you heard Pat Metheny's Last Train Home? And it's like, yes, and I hated it.
I didn't really like that one either.
No, I
But
can't.
when you were talking about that, you know who I really
Sorry,
love
Pat.
that nobody ever talks about is Nat King Cole. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
because he's so accessible.
Yeah, and talented
and
and
so talented in the voice and the piano playing and the stylizing. Like,
Oh,
his
yeah.
the taste.
Yeah.
That's what it is to me. Like, but his career was so short
yeah.
too. He
And
died-
I think that's Nat King Cole, at least, not that Nat King Cole wanted a short career, but sometimes I feel like there are some of those characters that like there just wasn't enough that people fill in the void. And usually when they fill in the void, it's very generously. Like, you know, not recommending anybody just go out and die. Don't do that. But like usually when people have short careers, we almost like glorify them when we want to make them exciting. Because there are plenty of people who, you know, have short careers and they never got anywhere and nothing happens of it. But it's almost like if you like a little bit of it, you fill in the void of like, oh, what could have been? And it's like, I don't know, man. Jimi Hendrix could have just become a sponsored artist and started doing Taco Bell commercials for all we know. Like,
yeah, I just think of Pearl Jam. Like, you know, Kurt Cobain and Eddie Vedder basically colleagues at the same time, same space.
Yeah.
And Eddie Vedder is who Kurt Cobain would be
Yeah.
if he'd lived.
Yeah.
Just, it wouldn't have been as special. It wouldn't have been as romantic. It wouldn't have been, you would have done all the work of filling in the void. As
you would have heard
put
Kurt
it.
Cobain singing the national anthem at Cubs games.
Oh my God, yeah.
And you'd be like, I didn't sign up for
cringe,
this.
so sad.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't want to say like I'm glad he, you know, but
No, but you fill in the void with beneficial things. And that's not to say that they would have necessarily had a bad career, but it just seems like the natural, the knee-jerk response is to fill in beneficially. You're like, oh man, they had this little catalog that was amazing. Think of the things that they could have done. It's like, it could have been terrible too. It's equally as probable by the laws of probability.
yes. I feel like you're a guy that you're a good guy to ask this, because now I'm understanding like how seriously you take all of this music and how, like, I don't know, unreined in you are. But like
My mom would be like, please rein it in a little bit.
well,
We won't be around forever.
I feel like you would be interested in this question. It makes me want to at least formulate it, and
Yeah.
so that's a good challenge for me.
No, fire away. Everything
Which
is
is-
on the table.
Which is that something I think about a lot is music. Is it moving forward? And like, then what does that mean? What does move forward mean? And then, if so, like where can music go that it hasn't already? Because I have a feeling that we are in like a really dim, repetitive culture on so many fronts, and music is one of them.
I have a lot of feelings on this.
Yeah, I feel
Of
like you
course I
do. Yeah.
You're like, you can start talking about golf and I'd have feelings.
Share one or two.
Yeah,
Do you agree or not agree with that statement?
I think it's easy to feel that way. I also don't agree with it. Glenn Phillips, the guy from Toad the Wet Sprocket, had a great line in a song long ago, because I'm one of those people who also like, I think Hayes Carl had talked about like remembering lyrics, and I was like, yeah, I was that kid too. And it was like, you know, every kid thinks that they're, you know, I'm paraphrasing again because I don't remember it now because it was 30 years ago, but it was like everybody thinks they're the last generation. Every kid thinks that they're the first to feel sort of this idea of like, because you're living in it, you think like, oh, this is very dismal. And it definitely does seem very dismal. I think, and on like what could probably be like an hours long lecture, if anybody wants me for a masterclass at the university, would be the economic conditions that surround the music industry. And I think right now, because of the proliferation of catalogs from, you know, capital management groups that are buying up, obviously Concord, everybody knows that's Concord's gotten famous for that. And everybody knows Concord because they've just bought up catalogs to get residual revenue. I'm not saying anything unkind. They're known for that. And a lot of other groups have done that as well. And I think that has decreased the interest in taking risk And Thomas Castle, who's a phenomenal guitar mandolin player who plays with our band sometimes, he and I had a whole conversation that I wrote a Substack on it, which was basically taking risk is how you get high reward. And we're currently living in an economic climate across all business fronts where people are very averse to taking risk. Everybody wants to talk about taking risk because risk taking is a fun story. Jelly Roll, like, oh, it was a risky move, but we bet on this guy. It wasn't risky at all. This was an industry plant. All of these people are industry plants. But selling it as risk has become an avenue to be able to be successful. And I don't know Jelly Roll, so he might be the nicest guy in the world, but it's like, nobody's willing to take the risk, but everybody wants to talk about the risk that they took. So there's so many industry plants that are getting ahead in the industry. And by the same nature, the writing that is following those careers is also not taking risks. It's not very adventurous. And I think because we live in a world where, Spotify pretty much determines the entirety of the music that people are listening to, what new music people find. And if it's not Spotify, it's through other podcasts, not this one, because I'm here. If you were another podcast, you wouldn't have me. I think because of that, it can seem really dismal that the things that people are listening to are the same things that are being put out by major labels, which are also, proliferating back catalogs because it's very risk averse. If you were to buy up the catalog of, Michael Jackson or something, or the Beatles, it will continue to bring in residual revenue. And trying to create music that will also create residual revenue results in very underwhelming art. I equated it to Target throw pillows. Everything looks like it's unique and original, but everybody has the same throw pillow. I think that's kind of the world that we're living in. But that doesn't mean that Target are the only ones making pillows, having a pillow that says home that everybody else has, or that, water buffalo that you see in every Airbnb that you ever stay at that's on the wall that everybody buys at Target, doesn't mean that that's the only art, but it can feel that way. And I think it really feels that way for a lot of people right now.
I think that's a great answer. And I relate to what you're saying. And I also have like a really different take on the why. And mine has to do with the relative absence of music education in not just, I don't mean like education in the formal sense of like schooling, but that people aren't playing music. We, here we don't see that because everybody plays music in Nashville. But,
no, I understand. Nobody sits around the piano in the parlor.
I mean, 100 years ago, every house had a piano.
Yeah, we had no internet. There was no Netflix show to.
So there was a cultural, it was like in people's blood in a way, as not just listeners, but players too. So they had, I think that, more, even slightly more challenging forms of music, like the Brubeck was a pretty good example. There's something going on that is very accessible, but it's not 145. Not that there's anything against 145.
Yeah.
I love 145. It's easy. It's nice. It's fun. It's accessible.
It's predictable. As David Greer once said, you know where it's going, and that's comfortable to people.
Yeah. But I mean, comfortable music there's a lot to be said for comfortable music.
You don't want the entire market to be comfortable music, because then it's underwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just, I feel like a music can only be as popular as its audience is sophisticated, or as is, open to that kind of, you know what I mean? Like there has to be an appetite on the part of the public, and that's part one. And then part two is that just like one era that I am sad that I just didn't get to be part of was like, oh God, I can't even remember.
It sounds a little bit like if you ever watched Midnight in Paris, where he's writing the novelty. Did you ever see the movie Midnight in Paris?
Yeah, I did.
And he was like, I long for another era. That's a whole other conversation about analyzing that movie. But
we can get into that. But where the Cotton Club was in upstate New York in the 50s, like where, like that scene.
Like the 125th Street, New York City. Because when I lived in New York, I actually lived next to the current Cotton Club.
Crazy.
Down by Dinosaur Barbecue. But yeah, like the original scene.
The original scene. And like that Miles biography, or maybe it's an autobiography, is so evocative of that time. And I just feel like maybe that was the most vital, and this is, whatever, very romantic take, but the most vital time and form of American music, but it was bound to small clubs as jazz and its evolution at that time invariably had to be. You know what I mean? And like part of the reason why jazz sort of faded was like Miles has a great story he tells when he was asked to open for Steve Miller, and Miles is just super pissed about it because
here's a man who truly told how he felt.
Yeah. And, but Steve Miller is playing 1,000 seat auditoriums, and, who's the promoter? Fillmore, asked, who loved Miles and wanted to put him in front of a new generation of young people.
Yeah.
And Miles just, I'm not opening for that motherfucker, and I get it, but it's just like, the music doesn't work in large rooms in the same way. So anyway,
there's an intimacy to it.
So what I'm trying to say is that there's just a lack of small niches, like a lack of small venues, smallness, cracks and crevices in society. Like to just jump on your Target pillows analogy, it is like so. Everybody listens to music on Spotify through Spotify. That's the only show in town. I know it's not, but it really is. And small clubs all over the country are shutting down. These are the places where like music is formed, like weird ripples happen.
Well, I think I can actually, I don't want to, devil's advocate you, but because I agree.
Please do. I mean,
I think that's totally true. I thought about this. Chris Cobb had posted that he was down in New Orleans, and like my wife and I just went down to New Orleans for a wedding and walked around, and not even like the French Quarter, because I think the French Quarter, my now brother-in-law Patrick, his family are jazz musicians from New Orleans, and the French Quarter was kind of seen with sort of like this, like it felt like Broadway in like the early 2000s, yes, the architecture is cool, like going to Merchants or something would be cool, but you weren't going to hang out there. And getting outside of the French Quarter and then seeing jazz music in New Orleans felt like that. It felt cool. It felt like the scene was very alive and well, that you had a bunch of musicians who weren't playing for necessarily the money side of it. And that's not to disparage them. They were playing to entertain themselves, but the audience was also a part of that. And that's the thing is like, if you're going into that heady space, you got to bring the audience with you to be able to keep coming back and doing more gigs. But it felt like there was like a passion on both sides. Like they wanted to get us out there with it, and the audience did too. And that was really cool in New Orleans to see that. And I talked to a couple of people who are like, it's probably the only place that like you can really be a working musician anymore in America. That is a big city.
Yeah, Austin is probably curtains.
Yeah, I went down to Austin on my last job, a whole NDA thing. But I was down there on a project out in Spicewood, Texas. Viewers can figure that one out. But yes, we were out there, and Spicewood was cool, but Rainy Street was not. Like I was like, my God, it's Midtown, but Austin version. But the other side of it is like, we do our gig at the 12 South Tap Room. We play bluegrass. It's free. It's 2 hours straight. I've always said I want it to be free. And it's because the owners of the tap room are old friends. They put up with anything that I say, which could be a lot. People keep coming back and they enjoy it. But we do it, and we have like a dedicated crowd of people. Dave Pomeroy from the Union is there most weeks, and our buddy Chris Stokes and Mickey Dobo and Nathan French. They all come out and they catch our show. Like week after week, they're there, and like we've got a growing body. We had the Mountain Grass Unit guys in there, Luke and Drury, who've become good friends because they're phenomenal musicians and great people. And that brought in a whole other crowd of the Wooks. The Wooks came out of the woodwork, and like now we got like a Wook crowd in there. And it's like, okay, this is possible because, I mean, as you saw when I had Ben here earlier, my whole approach is I'm not averse to rehearsing, but we're not doing a show that's contractually obligated. We're going and we're playing, and this is the time to be adventurous and do licks and ideas that you might not try out live initially somewhere else. And I think that's where that exists, is when the players and the audience are both there for like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what songs are going to be played. It might not all land, but the stuff that does land is going to land hard. And so I think the fact that I do it means that like it has to exist. It's like almost like a Matrix thing. Like, if we're underground, then there must be others,
Yeah. I mean, that's a great, great pushback, because there you are having like a small club weekly gig, and that is where that exploration can happen.
Yeah. And I think when I was coming up in music, and where I kind of got irritated and got a little bit better in my late 30s was I would get frustrated that I wouldn't get calls for road gigs because I saw people getting on big country tours and then they could buy a house. And I was fortunate I was able to buy a house just by the nature of having been here long enough that you could get a job that paid 40 grand a year and still be able to buy a house. And that's why I own a house. But I would get frustrated that I wouldn't get calls for that. A buddy is out with Ella Langley and they picked up a piano player and I was irritated. I was like, why didn't I get called for that? And then I had this moment, actually, Victor Wooten's the music lesson, to come full circle back to that. He kind of talks about his struggles with that in the late 80s and the early 90s. And realizing that what he did didn't fit neatly into systems. It was so out there and unique and only a thing that he could do, for better or for worse. It was just Victor. You got Victor as a bass player, and that was the bass player you were getting. I think I've had a moment where I've realized that's true about myself, but I also realized that there are people who do want that, and they do exist. And I think they're growing, man. I think we've got a resistance to the industry, because I start to see the industry, having worked jobs up and down Music Row, day jobs. I'm starting to see the industry like copy some of the stuff that I do, like my unhinged social media posts. I post nonsense videos about our 12 South Taproom gig, which is why I said Ben and I have to film worm content, which sounds as weird as it's going to be. But like, I'm starting to see more of that. My favorite is actually Amtrak, the train company. If Amtrak ever wants to hire me, I'm on board, because I've been doing these silly videos and Amtrak started doing it. I'm not saying Amtrak saw mine, but like, there's a growing group of people who just want chaos, like funny chaos.
Yeah.
They want that Andy Kaufman. They want it. I think everybody really secretly wants to be pushed a little bit out of their comfort zone so that they can be intrigued and interested, but they want to know they've still got one foot on home base. Like you can't go total chaos with music and with performance and with entertainment. It just has to be Steve Martin, I think, is another great example in the 70s. You know, his whole bit, as he described it, was he was playing a comedian who was bombing and the audience thought that was hilarious. And when Steve Martin stopped doing stand-up comedy, he was like, I didn't have a second bit. I didn't really want to reinvent it. So I went back into bluegrass and doing films, obviously, which was very successful for him. I think like if I could be Steve Martin someday, that'd be great.
I get that. I could see a try.
Yeah, there's a little bit in there. He was born in Texas, but people don't know that. I was born in Texas, but people don't know that. And so anyway,
Yeah, that's just the beginning of the similarities.
Yeah.
Well,
we both juggle too, so there's that, and play banjo.
There is a better place to put this segue, I feel like, but I missed it, so we're gonna have to make do with what we've got. But I feel like you have a song that you can share that you just wrote.
Yeah, I wrote it actually on Sunday, and it was coming back from New Orleans, and I'd been listening to Taj Mahal, who's not from New Orleans but spent a lot of time there, and like I got really into like Professor Longhair again, like the stuff that I listen to. People think like, oh, you do a bluegrass gig, so like you go home and you listen to, Blue Highway, and it's like, yeah, I mean sometimes, but like no, I'm like jamming out to Professor Longhair, like putting on that fest, man. And I think people don't realize that. And so anyway, I was listening to that, and I started out playing guitar. I studied obviously theory and piano, and started doing just kind of fingerstyle stuff, self-taught. It wasn't inspired by Doc Watson because I hadn't heard of Doc Watson yet. It was just, oh, this is ragtime on guitar. Like I vibe with this. I'd heard Chet Atkins, who did that too. So it was more Chet inspired, I would say, and Jerry Reed. But anyway, yeah, it was just sort of like my ethos on life. And it was kind of funny coming back from New Orleans, kind of making this happy song about the nonsense of life,
Let's hear it.
Nobody gonna butter my biscuit. Ain't nobody gonna bake my bread. Ain't nobody gonna punch my ticket. Ain't nobody gonna keep me fed. Hard work, what's gonna get you? Hard work, not an effing thing. Hard work, what's gonna get you? Hard work going to make you sing about hard work. My mama told me when I was a little boy that hard work is its own reward. Now I know and I'm an older man, this hard work's just an effing chore. Hard work, what's gonna get you? Hard work, not an effing thing. Hard work, what's gonna get you? Hard work going to make you sing about hard work. There's hard work in the fields and there is hard work at a desk. There's hard work on the road, but there's no hard work in my bed. Now that mama's a little bit older, she sees that the rich stay rich. When we get to talking hard work, all we do is moan and bitch about hard work. What's gonna get you? Hard work, not an effing thing. Hard work, what's gonna get you? Hard work going to make you sing. Hard work going to make you sing. Hard work going to make you sing.
That was fantastic, man. Great playing, and also I feel like that was emblematic of you, your effort not to take yourself too seriously, and at the same time, kind of presenting a fairly high level of artistry there in the playing. It's really, really great.
Thank
That
you.
opening riff is very clawy.
Oh, I did. Yeah, it was like a half diminished, like descending line of chromaticism, which I actually just like that. I've done that on a couple other songs. It was like one of those like nerdy moments in college. It's like, oh man, this is really cool. Is this a fully diminished? Like, no, it's a half diminished. Oh well, I think that's what it is. I'm gonna like go back and be like, oh crap, it was a fully diminished. But it was just like a lick that I had come up with forever ago. That is kind of like a fun, ambiguous riff. You know, it lends itself to the dominant seven. So those of you who don't know theory out there, now's your chance to get
Nerdy
excited. Yeah.
Received and acknowledged. So you have a 16-month-old. I have a 15-month-old. They'll probably know each other if we play our cards right.
If I don't end up in the middle of Montana, like a Dan
Or
Seal
me.
song.
I'm not going to live here forever.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to raise my kid in Nash Vegas.
You're gonna wake up in Idaho and realize I bought the house next to you. You're like, ah, crap.
I'm like, maybe a little too close.
McCall is beautiful.
Has having a kid changed anything? Have you grown up a little bit? Have you calmed down? I don't know what adjective one might put, but what change, if any, have you noticed in becoming a parent?
You hear this a lot from people, and I always thought it was like one of those things that like you hear and you're like, oh yeah, but you have to say that. I realized I've become more like my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that sounds so cliche, but like mannerisms my dad would have, just like, okay. Like he does that still to this day. And like my wife was the one who caught it. She's like, Dad, your dad does that. And I was like, what the, oh God.
Like literally that what you
Literally
just did.
the inflection, the tone of voice, the reason I said it. And like, there's good reason for that. There's a reason that it becomes trope, which is that you saw it so much in context that now you're on the other end of that context. And so therefore you are living the behaviors which you,
in a way that you didn't before.
yeah, you're seeing it from the other side. You've gone to being the pitcher from the catcher. Like you're now seeing the other side of the throw. And it's a funny and a weird moment to have. I think it's highlighted some aspects of my personality. Like I can get frustrated very easily. Otherwise than that, I don't think, to me, it was such a planned decision. Like this wasn't an accident for us. It was something we had talked about. It was something that we had planned for. And I think that I knew my life, and my wife she can secretly be a little weird too, which is why we work well together. And we can have heady conversations like this. There's sometimes some chill, like 2 a.m. She's like, what do you think about death? And I'm like, really not now. Now's not the time. But like those sorts of conversations were already happening. So I don't think by having a kid, I think there was the most aha moment that I tell people is when you leave the hospital. At any point up to there, he was an unplanned C-section. At any point, I should have had the thought of like, oh yeah, this is my life forever. At any point of planning this, at any point of growing up and thinking, yeah, I want to have a kid someday. It wasn't until I was leaving the hospital, I was like, oh fuck, I got to do this for the rest of my life. And it was like, really astounded how dumb I am that I didn't think about that before. And like, I got over it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I always equate it to, again, my parents are wonderful. When I was 16, I remember my dad handed me a razor. He's like, you got to shave. Your face just looks like trash. And I was just like, oh, okay. That's one way to tell me that. And he gave me a razor. There's no instruction. There's just, here's a razor. Here's some shaving cream. Don't cut yourself. You're probably gonna. And I love that about my dad. That's how we Capozzolis live our lives. And I remember one morning I was getting ready for school and I was like shaving and I locked eyes with myself in the mirror. And I was just like, oh God, that's me. I exist. Like I'm looking at myself and I'm in charge of this giant thing of muscles and sinew and tissue and feelings. And my dad was leaving to go to work in the city and he's like got his suit on. He like turns, he looks at me and goes, you good? Cause I'm just like standing there like this in the mirror. I was like, I just realized I exist. And he goes, yeah, that'll happen. Have a good day. And just walks away. And I think that's like my entire approach to things. It's like, oh God, okay, you're fine. Cause you're already here. You're going to have to be fine. You know?
I think that's a really good moment to end it on, my man.
You're already here. You're going to have to be fine.
Yeah, well, I can relate because you can go as deep and sad and as excited or as terrified as existence suggests you might be, and yet, okay, well, I'm still here. Like,
yeah,
one must eat, one must poop, one must change the baby's diaper. I will say, like, for me, having the kid has helped. Like, I'm a bit prone to, I'm given to bouts of extended melancholy.
That's part of being an artist.
And for me, having a kid has made it really, I just can't go, I can't indulge.
Yeah.
Quite, as much. There's just no time for one. And also it's like, okay, what are you really going to do? Are you really going to like off yourself? Seriously, buddy? You're like going to abandon your child?
Yeah, no,
you're not.
Yeah.
So
like, I definitely know that feeling because it is easy to get there. I remember actually, I don't drink that much. I'll, drink whiskey and like read a book at night, or sometimes even like last night, I just made like a thing of tea and read a book. And I remember asking my dad once, because I'd heard stories my dad, like in college, my mom was like, oh yeah, he was a rabble rouser and he was just always going out with different women and he was hard to track down and drinking so much. And I asked my dad, I was like, I never knew any side of that. Like, what happened? And my dad was like, well, your brother was born and then you were born. And you can't do that because, God forbid something happened to you. I'd never forgive myself. And he's like, so I just kind of stopped drinking. And like, I think having a kid actually made me realize that. I was like, oh God, he's like, I'm OCD enough. And I don't mean that like in passing, like my brain really does just hyperfixate on things. They're like, God forbid anything happened. Like it calmed me down in a little bit. Like it kind of takes those like manic states that I would have before and kind of reels them in like, get your shit together. You have responsibilities here that involve other people who cannot take care of those things. So you got to get it together,
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I feel like everybody should be a parent. It's just good for you.
It's a life experience.
Yeah, it's a life experience. In some ways, it's the point of life. Like in a really like simple, it's a very simple answer.
Yeah.
To like, what is the purpose of life? It's like,
my wife joked
it going.
It's to have a little friend. And I was like, oh, that's not right. Like, it's not to have a little friend. But I do think it does open up your eyes about humanity and existence. And we've talked about, my wife and I, about like, it's not for everybody. And we understand that. Yeah. But I think for us, it really did open up an understanding of what existence was, how confusing it is, and how to like make it more enjoyable. Because I think as an artist, it's easy to get melancholy and just be sad and like, life is art and art is stupid, and like, just go down these like destructive rabbit holes that are not helpful. And having a kid is like, no, you have to make art so that they enjoy it because it matters.
Yeah. Lovely. Let's take it home with one more song if you feel like it. What is that song that you're going to play?
Oh, with Ben, Blue Ridge Cabin Home. It's a traditional tune.
That old chestnut. Chris, it's been a pleasure talking with you, man. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
We'll do it again.
Hell yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Side where I wandered when I was a lad, and I wandered along to the place I called home in those blue ridge hills far away. Oh, I love those hills. shack in those Blue Ridge hills far away, where my mother and dad, they're laid there to rest. They are sleeping in peace together there. Oh, I love those hills of old Virginia. From those Blue Ridge hills I did roam. When I die, won't you bury me on the mountain, far away in my Blue Ridge mountain home. Sigh in those Blue Ridge hills far away, where my mother and dad, they're laid there to rest. They are sleeping in peace together there. Oh, I love those hills of old Virginia. From those Blue Ridge hills I did roam. When I die, won't you bury me on the mountain, far away in my Blue Ridge mountain home.
You gotta keep that.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go ahead and click here to like and subscribe. You can click right there to watch another video, or click here to watch a playlist featuring songs of the Morse Code podcast. Okay, thank you very much.